We are here with very worshipful brother Harry Adamson. You are the past senior Grand Deacon or Grand Senior Deacon.
Yeah, in the year 2007, 2008.
You're also past master of Kilcona Lodge.
Yeah, that was in 2007, I do believe. But I was also past master of Transcona Lodge number 123. But that lodge and Kilcona Lodge, they amalgamated in 2003. And then I became master in 2007 of that lodge.
And currently, if I'm not mistaken, you're the chaplain of Kilcona Lodge.
Yes, I am. But with this coronavirus, unfortunately, we haven't had no meetings and everything like that. But I am the chaplain. And at the moment, we've got people waiting at the sidelines. There's one or two to be raised to the sublime degree. There is one waiting to be advanced to the fellowcraft, and we have two, I do believe, that are waiting to be initiated. But with what's happening right now, things are on hold.
And you are also, the last name that you see on the screen isn't a coincidence. You are my father, so we're recording this for Father's Day, to show on Father's Day as a tribute to not only all the Masonic dads out there, but just all the dads out there who have to put up with dummies like me for a son. So much appreciated.
I didn't have to put up with you too long because in 2004 you decided to move down to Ottawa.
That's right, and then from Ottawa to Windsor, and here I am.
Yeah, and you stayed there. You didn't want to come back to the land of milk and honey, Winnipeg.
I love Winnipeg. Don't get me in trouble with the Winnipeg people. But I do want to take a moment to show you something, and to show this is going to go on the YouTube video too.
I'll have to put my glasses on.
I'll put it up to the screen. You should be able to see it in a second. You know, we're looking at all the people in YouTube can see you, you know, with your shiny bald head and all that, but I don't know if you can see this at all.
Oh, yeah, funny you see that. That's my sister's wedding going back 50 years maybe.
I remember when I was, oh, go ahead.
That was the years when long hair was famous, the Beatles, the Rolling Stones in England. That was it.
I remember growing up, I used to tell my mom, who's their summer, I used to tell her I wanted long hair, and she told me I wasn't allowed. Meanwhile, you got to have long hair when you were a younger man.
Well, my mom and I didn't really have arguments, but everybody had long hair then. It was the just after the hippies, that age group in the 60s. It's different how times have changed. It's funny how things change. You have different groups. They had the country and western. They had the Beatles, the Rolling Stones. Now you've got different type of music going on. But every age has its own thing going on, and we try as parents, especially as fathers, to bring up like you as we did, but you pick your own way to go.
That's true. That's true. So Grandma Lily didn't mind you having long hair. She didn't.
No, Grandma Lily eventually got used to it.
Well, I'm sure my mom would have got used to it if she'd let me have long hair, but she told me I wasn't allowed.
Yeah, no. So that's the stage we went through.
How'd your dad feel about it?
He never mentioned too much about it. He was really quiet. That's the way he wants to be. That's the way he is.
Well, speaking of hair, I'm glad that I take after Papa with my hair and not you.
Yeah, you got it. You got that.
Far, knock on wood.
Yeah, he kept his hair for quite a while.
So speaking of, we mentioned a few different fathers, your dad and then your father-in-law.
Yeah.
So your first involvement with Masonry would have been through your dad. What do you remember about him and Masonry? Did he talk about it at all? Did he go?
Yes, we did. He was past master of Haltwhistle Lodge in England that was consecrated in 1915. I cannot remember what year he was master, but he was. But I wasn't living at home then because I left home and moved to Newcastle for work reasons, and I lived in board and lodgings. So I wasn't too much involved. I knew he went to meetings, and then it was very, I'm not saying secretive, but quiet. They didn't, in Haltwhistle, they had a Masonic room, and it was, they went out to the meetings. He went every once a month, maybe once every 2 weeks to meetings and all that. One thing I can remember is an aunt of mine, my dad's sister. She was coming down in the house when he was getting ready to go to a meeting, the lodge. And then she says to him, "Okay, Alan, what pant leg are you going to roll up tonight?" Because you wore this pant leg, and I'm scratching my head because my aunt, she catered to the meetings. She was a help during the catering, and I suppose with the catering, she would see them with the pant legs rolled up, and I'm thinking, what pant leg? That is referring to the different degrees that will be putting on at that time, and let's start to scratch. What pant leg are you going to roll up tonight, Alan? That got me. That took my interest a bit.
I remember, it's growing up in a Masonic family. You always hear, you don't know everything, but you always hear things that pique your interest. I remember growing up. At the time, you were working days. I think you might have been going into the master's chair, so you'd always wake up early, like 6 in the morning or so, to get ready.
Yeah.
And I'd hear you I'd be in my room waking up, and I'd hear you in the kitchen talking to yourself, thinking, my dad must be going crazy, just sitting there mumbling to himself, all alone. Now I know what you were doing. You were getting ready for your degree.
Yeah, that's correct. That was doing memory work, whatever charge you were doing. Also, while you were going through the degrees, back then, we were not given a book or sheets of paper, what you had to learn to move on to the next one. It was word of mouth, either over the phone, and every second or third night, the 2 people or 3 people you were going through with, you'd meet in somebody's house, and there was a coach, and it was word of mouth. He would say the next line, and you would repeat it, and that was. But we had one person who's going through with me, was my brother Ted York. I liked going to his place because his wife put on some fantastic sandwiches. So we always looked to go into Brother Ted York's wife's house. We did at our house too that summer, but hers in particular, little things like that stick in your mind. So it's things like that stick with you.
What else, going back, your father, worshipful Brother Alan Adamson, he passed away before I was born, but I got to hear a few stories about him over the years. Do you have any stories that stick out in your mind about him, either Masonically or otherwise?
There is one incident when I was leaving home, going down to Newcastle for my apprenticeship. I was living in board and lodgings, and where was I going to live? I didn't know. But then my dad says to me, "Hey, Harry, come with me. I think I found a place for you to stay. So we went to this woman's house. It was a Mrs. Johnson. And it so happened her son was a school teacher, but he was leaving home for his school teaching. And I was, here you go, you pay so much a week, and she would provide you with an evening meal and a breakfast. And that was really good. So how did he meet or get in touch with this Mrs. Johnson woman? Until one day I'm there, she was getting dressed up and she put on a white dress. Oh, excuse me, Mr. Johnson. Oh, I'm going to the Eastern Star. Oh, okay. So later on in life, I put two and two together. My dad was a Mason in Otwissell, England, which is 35, 40 miles from Newcastle. And he got in touch with this Mrs. Johnson, whose husband had passed away. Presumably, he'd been a Mason. And I suppose through the grapevine, that's how we got in touch with her. Her son was leaving home for his job, and maybe she wanted somebody to help cut the grass and whatever, and I got it. So that's a question I never got to ask him, if he got it through the grapevine, the Masonic law. You know, that's going back, 50 years. 50 years, it's going back. So I do believe there was maybe a grapevine going on, and I, be quite honest, I always called her Mrs. Johnson, and I cannot even know what her first name was.
That's I think that's true for, I don't remember my the first names of my actually first landlords when I lived in Ottawa. They had me over for the dinner a bunch of times, but I can't even think of their names now. I just called them Mr. and Mrs.
Yeah, but when you went to Ottawa, you found your own place to go and stay.
It was an interesting place. I'll have to tell you some stories about that place someday. Actually, I don't know if she wants to be on the show or not, but Mom has a really, I like her story about your dad going to get ice cream. See if she wants to be on to tell the story, because I always liked it.
You want to tell the story about ice cream? Yes, she says she will be.
Just this and that's it. Hi, love.
Hey, Mom. How you doing?
Sit so you can see you.
Fine. How are you?
Not bad.
That's good. Yeah, okay. I remember Harry's grandpa and grandma, mom and dad were, Harry's mom and dad were here visiting from Halt Whistle, and we took them to Dairy Queen, and just on Henderson Highway there. And he was just, I forget what he ordered, whether it was a sundae or a banana split or whatever. But there was three of us there. Dad didn't go because he was working, but he ordered this, I forget, banana split or a sundae, and it was so big his eyes just about popped out of his head. He couldn't get over the size of this this sundae. So, but it was nice having them here. I wish they would have been able to come another time, but well, Harry's mom came one other time after Harry's dad had passed away. She came in winter, I think, and that's when Dad was having problems with his stomach and he needed blood transfusions and that. And you were, of course, were just a baby, and so she was here that time, and that was it. But then, as you remember, we went back a few times, so it was really nice. Going back, especially for Dad and whatever. So that was good. So
I remember one of my earliest memories is it was winter when Grandma Lily came, because I remember I was waiting for her with you and Dad at the airport. I remember having my snowsuit on and my crutches and my artificial legs at the time. And I remember she brought me a book about Thomas the Train when she got off the plane. I remember that. So.
That's right. And one Christmas, she was here one Christmas. That's right. She was here at Christmas time. Was that in winter? Yeah, of course, Christmas is in winter. But, and I remember her bringing you it was a rocking horse, and I forget what was on top the rocking horse. And but she couldn't get over our winters. I thought she would freeze, so I said, bring warm clothes because it gets pretty cold, like not like England. And but she didn't mind it. But you remember Lynette from Australia?
Yep.
And when she was here, we had a fantastic, I forget, it was of course, in the winter, and we had this fantastic storm, and she couldn't get over the amount of snow that had fallen. She was just amazed. So our winters can be quite a thing for people to see. So
speaking of Australia, you always worry about me and stuff and make sure I'm okay. But I heard a rumor that you once spent a year just gallivanting around Australia with no supervision or anything like that. So how come you can do that, but I get in trouble for going on trips?
Being a mom is different. So, but no, it was good. But I'm glad you're doing okay, and take care of yourself, and talk to you again next week then. And thanks for the interview.
All right, talk to you later.
Okay, bye, love. Love you.
Love you too. And he's back.
Yeah, so no, it's my turn again.
Did you always plan on joining Masonry because your dad was a Mason, or because you didn't join until you moved to Canada? Thanks to that lady we just talked to. She stole you away from England.
Yeah, no, well, that is correct. Because after I served my apprenticeship and I worked in England for a year, and then I went and got a job at sea, so I traveled. So I never really thought about it until I came to Canada and settled down. And a lot of people where I work in Transcona, that's one of the major CN rail yards, repair shops in Canada, and a few of the people I worked with, they were Masons, and with your mom, her dad being a Mason, that's what piqued my interest. So that's when I applied and started going through my Masonic life.
And when was that?
I joined Transcona Masonic Lodge in 19 I was master beginning of the 1990s. I forget exactly the you'll know because you got my I passed on my medals to you. I was master in 1995.
I'll be showing some of those during the this video. I know it's a little while, so you might remember it well, but I heard a rumor from Papa back when he was still alive that you managed to get yourself locked out of the building during your initiation. They had to come and rescue you.
That could have happened. I cannot really remember because Transcona Masonic Lodge used to meet in the Transcona Legion in the upstairs lodge room, which was quite interesting because every time we had to set up the lodge and put down the chairs, put the east, west, north, south, and everything. And then after the meeting, you tear it all down and have your refreshment hour, and then go downstairs and support the Legion downstairs. But one reason why we do not meet there now was the year I was master of the lodge, the Transcona Legion had a fire. So we were unable to have meetings. So fortunately, East Kilcona Masonic Temple, they let us meet there rent-free due to our hardships. That's where, and through that, we found them all beneficial. So we amalgamated in 1983 with Kilcona Masonic Lodge and became Kilcona Lodge 183. And that was beneficial for both lodges and for us and such like. So it was something happens in your history. There's nothing you want to happen while you're master lodge of fire, and scratching your head, wondering what we're going to do. But other Masons bent over backwards to help us out, and we got through it. Unfortunately, we could have possibly survived as Transcona, but we found it beneficial for both lodges to amalgamate.
Yeah, amalgamation is one of those topics that comes up a lot in Masonic circles, whether it's appropriate or not appropriate, or the best way to go about it. But I think, certainly from what I know, Kilcona Lodge is an example of it working very well and being a benefit to both lodges.
Definitely, yeah.
So let's go back. We talked to my mom. My poor mom, you know, her son is a Mason, her husband is a Mason, her dad was a Mason, her father-in-law was a Mason. Let's talk a little bit about Papa. I heard a story that Papa Del Penston, he was a driving instructor in his former, is one of his careers. And I heard a rumor that when you first met him, you had a bit of an accident.
Papa, he was a driving instructor, and when I met him, he was on the reviewing board. If you got so many points on your license, you would have to go and see him and explain the problems and this and that. And so that's what he was. He was a reviewing officer. So anyway, the first time I met him was in London airport. He was coming to visit his daughter, who was with me in England at the time, and they would come for a holiday and coming to meet me for the first time. So I was parked in Heathrow Airport, waiting for they got off the plane. Hello, how are you doing? Oh, this is Harry. Oh, pleased to meet you, and all that. Well, now we're going to have to go, and we're going to have to drive 300 miles north to where we live. I get in the car, pulling out from the parking lot. I hit the car next to me. Okay, what do I do? I looked, a little bit damage to the car next to me. The rental car that I had a big ding in the door. Well, I'll pay for them when I get back. So kept on driving. And then he was in the back and he says, "Excuse me, Harry, but do you know that I am a reviewing officer for driving in Winnipeg?" Oh, too late now, you've caught me.
Well,
that's one of these. I just feel sorry for the person who came to the car next to them that was damaged. Put it this way, that's going back 40 odd years. I wouldn't do it now, but back then, nerves, whatever. One of them things that you shouldn't have done, but I did it.
Well, from that auspicious occasion, it still worked out, because here we are,
Yeah.
you know, 50 odd years later.
Yeah.
Do you think that Masonry, your Masonic career, brought you closer to Papa and to your father?
My father, Masonry, yes, but it was over a long distance, because I didn't join Masonry until I came to Canada, but he was a Mason in England, and I was only a Mason for about 5 years before he passed away. So over the telephone, yes, possibly we could see, but I was never a Mason with him. But with Papa, it was meeting somebody new, and he was a Mason. So I'm not saying brought us close together, but we had the same common understanding. We knew where we were going, and whether it brought us closer together because I became a Mason, I don't know. We went to meetings together. We were members of different lodges. He grew up in the country in Elm Creek in Manitoba, and they had a Masonic lodge called Crescent Lodge, and he was past master of Crescent Lodge in the country. And then when he moved to the city, he became a member of a city lodge. So yes, we had the same things in common, and we could talk and everything. And your mom knew what your dad was going through when she was left alone. Oh, excuse me, while we went out for meetings and all that, and they were let you know, knew what was going on and everything. But when we went to meetings, we traveled with a designated driver, and there was 3, and there's some good experiences coming back home from the meetings, not because of, it's because one instant was coming home, it's 30, 40 below. It was my car, the designated driver. The car heater went. No heater in the car. So I was driving home. Somebody had a scraper inside the car, scraping the inside of the window. So I could see through the window to get home. Maybe you shouldn't have drove home, but that's experiences you have that you look back on.
I've had a few of those trips. That's the thing about the importance of traveling and visiting as a Mason, I think, right? Is you get the experience of not just visiting the lodge and sitting in lodge, but you get the experience of the car ride and the travel to and from, and getting to know, your brothers and getting new experiences with them and all that stuff. It's so important.
Yeah, that's true. When I was appointed as the Grand Junior Deacon, I followed the Grand Master around, which is a friend of mine, and what they have is called the Northern Trip, which is a bus trip up north from Winnipeg to visit Flin Flon, Thompson, and the Paul. And you have a night in each one, and they put on a degree at each lodge, and the wives go with them, and one lodge puts on a ladies' night. That is something different. That it's not too often we get to go up north, but that was a really good experiences to go up and see how these northern lodges are working out in Manitoba. We used to have, we don't now, but we used to have a trip down to a lodge in Grand Forks in the States, in North Dakota. And they would put on a degree on a Saturday morning just to accommodate the trip from the Masons in Manitoba down there to watch them put on the degree. And it was always a 3rd degree that they would put on. And their lodge hall was like a theater, and they had a stage. And it was really very, very interesting to go on. Unfortunately, through times, that has fallen by the wayside. And, oh, excuse me, I get to go on. But things like that stick in your mind. Really, really good.
Yeah, I've had a chance to take a lot of trips, and it's something I take a lot of enjoyment out of. And it's probably the one piece of advice I always give to new members when they're first joining is find out when your lodge is traveling, and if you can jump in. If you want to chip in for gas, you can, but just figure out when they're going, where they're going, and jump in and go with them.
Unfortunately, over the last few years, I haven't been on visitations as much as I should. That's my own fault. I should remember.
You visited a lot. Like you've earned your time, and I think it's more important for the new guys to visit, because not saying you're old, but you're old, and new members learn so much.
One of the visits, not one of the visits I did, is one of the visits you did. As you know, I come from England, Northern England, but when you were younger, you decided to go on an archaeology dig and dig up my ancestors. at Hadrian's Wall.
That's true.
I grew up about 2 miles from Hadrian's Wall. So there you go. You decide, hey, Dan, I'm going to go and dig up your ancestors.
I do. I remember that trip. The thing I remember about it most is I got a chance while I was there, because I was a Mason. Or was that the second time I was there? At some point or another. No, it was the second time. I went back for my cousin's wedding. After the archaeological dig, I went back for my cousin's wedding, and I got to visit Haltwhistle Lodge while I was there.
Yeah, that's correct, yeah.
The thing that has stuck out with me for that one is ginger beer. It's a soft drink. I never had it before, and they served it to me at their refreshment, their dinner table, and that's my favorite drink in the world now. So thank you, Haltwhistle Lodge, for that. I discovered it through them.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember that ginger beer, yeah. Yeah, because there's twice you went over, once on the archaeology dig and digging up my old ancestors, and then once you went over for the wedding and you got a chance to go and visit my dad's lodge.
I did, yeah, and it was that's a very special Masonic memory. One of those special traveling memories you get.
Yeah.
I remember, I don't know if you remember it or not, but when I got my third degree, you were present for that. You came to visit us.
So yes, you did.
I have a lot of fond memories of that. I actually looked. I don't know if you recall, but we were driving from I was in law school at the time, so we were driving from the Masonic Temple downtown to meet up with some friends who were at the bar. You and me were in our suits. So was Bon Soto.
Yeah.
But I don't know if you remember, we were stopped at a light, and Windsor, Ontario has a few strip clubs in town, and one of the vans, which picks people up, stopped next to us and gave us all free passes to go to the strip club. Which we didn't go. I don't want to get you in trouble with Mom, but I still have that pass.
Yeah, I remember that. We were at the Masonic meeting, and Mom was at the place where your law school students were.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also remember during the meeting, once I got my degree, they were going around asking brethren to speak, and they said, now we'll have Brother Adamson say a few words, and you stood up to talk, and they're talking about me. So said the better looking Brother Adamson gets to speak.
Yeah. Well, you've had your things that I don't know how many people know about when you were in Hamilton, and you were archaeology dig, but anyways, you went on a horseback ride. But anyways, when you came back to Winnipeg after you visited to Hamilton, you had your arm in a sling. Guess who fell off the horse?
I remember that. I had a lot wrong with me when I came back. Oh my God. Because that was Katimavik. So I had a broken arm. I had, we were finishing off, so I hadn't slept in like 3 days because we had done, we were all going our separate ways. So we all spent 3 days just hanging out and having a good time. So I remember being pretty, I was pretty exhausted. I think I even had pink eye. I had a lot of things wrong with me coming out of that plane to meet you again. So what happens? You leave me alone for 6 weeks, and I come back even more broken.
Yeah. No, but that's you. I remember when you went to Ottawa for you finished school. You came back home. You had one more year left in your first 3 years of university. And he says, oh, Dad, I'm going to go to the University of Ottawa to finish off my BA in anthropology. I said, what? Oh, you're not? He said, yeah, I've got one more year left. He still graduated from the University of Winnipeg, but did the last year in and ever since then, you've been all over the place.
Yeah, it keeps me out of trouble. But let's talk some more, since this is the Father's Day episode. Let's talk some more about dads. Okay. And I asked you earlier, what sticks out in your mind about your dad. Masonically, you mentioned him connecting you with a place to live. But what do you remember about your dad more in general? What type of man was he?
He was a fairly quiet. He did quite a bit of volunteer. He volunteered for the St. John's Ambulance Brigade, and in Haltwhistle, that's a small town of 3,000-4,000 people. But for an ambulance, there were volunteers, and so he had his first aid and all that. And every time somebody phoned that says, "Oh, they need an ambulance," he would go and drive. And so that's one thing he was really interested in his first aid, is volunteering with the St. John's Ambulance Brigade. He was a member of the Methodist Church, and they had some steps to repair. So he went and repaired the steps. He was always seemed to be doing something. Very quiet. Quite a few friends, but his main interest seemed to be doing the work, because it's unfortunate to say, but when he passed away of a heart attack, and the heart attack he had that while he was, while he was polishing the ambulance. He couldn't be any closer to the ambulance when he had a heart attack, but that's what he was. That's what I remember most about my dad. He liked going to soccer. He was a supporter of Carlisle United Football Club, which was in the 3rd or 4th division of the English League, and he had season tickets for that, and he'd go there every second week. He liked that.
Did that cause any trouble with you? Because aren't you a Newcastle United fan?
I was, because I liked soccer. Newcastle was my favorite team, but I didn't have season tickets, or I go to the occasional match, but I wasn't a regular goer to live games. I would watch them on TV, and I would go with my dad occasionally to see Carlisle play, but that was it.
What about some memories you have of Papa, the type of person he was? Father-in-law.
He was different. He seemed to be more outgoing. Papa was more into hands-on things, repairing things. He built a cottage out Lac du Bonnet, which is outside of Winnipeg, and he did a lot of work on that. He would build wishing wells, spare scraps of wood. He would build wishing wells. He always seemed interested in doing things like that, and he was that way inclined. That was the major difference. My dad wasn't very good. I'm not saying very good. He did woodwork and all that, but Papa, on the other hand, he was carpentry and all that. That's a basic differences with them. I remember once when my dad was here on vacation, and we took him out on a car trip just outside of Winnipeg to nearest town. We went to Carmen for Sells, hamburger, hot dogs, and we're going along, and then all of a sudden he says to me, "Hey, Harry," I said, "What?" He says, "You've gone 22 kilometers and you haven't had a curve in the road." He couldn't get over how straight the roads were, like, you know, how small England is compared to the size of Manitoba. But that was one of the things that surprised him, was the straightness of the roads and no hills.
You mentioned, yeah, I remember being in England, and it was a very curvy, a lot of curves in the road, that's for sure.
Yeah.
You mentioned Papa's cottage in Lac du Bonnet. One memory I have when I was very young, I don't think I was more than 4 or 5, it involves you at that cottage. You had taken me out along their driveway. They had rocks on either side, and you told me there's probably some snakes in there. Let's see if we can find any. So
Yeah.
we were picking up the rocks to see, and then I remember I picked one rock up and the snake slithered out, and I wasn't expecting it, so I jumped back and screamed. And I remember Nana came running out and started yelling at you. Stop scaring my grandson. What are you doing? I
Yeah,
remember
I remember that, but that's a chance you take.
I just remember the image of seeing her running down the driveway.
I don't think I'd be the first son-in-law who's got in trouble from the mother-in-law.
No, I'm sure there's a few.
Yeah. So
Did you before you joined a Masonry, did you talk to Papa at all about it, or did you just tell him after you decided to join that you would be?
I kind of remember. I think we talked about it, but he wasn't the one that says you should join. You know, because like Masonry is that it's your own choice, and that's the way I didn't tell you to join. You didn't join, and you know. So I think he was very happy that I did join and all that, but it was, excuse me, just gonna drink of water here. One of, excuse me, one of the reasons I maybe joined was a lot of my workmates, they were into Masonry and such like, and I was curious of what was going on and all that. And there's lots of anecdotes. It makes good men better and whatever. I suppose it does. It's whatever you put in, you get out, that type of thing. But I was curious, and once I got in, my curiosity got the better of me, and I kept up with it, and going through the chairs, and was very happy that a friend of mine, when he was Grand Master, thought enough of me to appoint me as the Grand Junior Deacon, 2004.
Well,
So that was very, very rewarding and a happy feeling that somebody thinks of you that much that they offer you because he's a friend of mine, but we worked together. We occasionally didn't see eye to eye together on different things. You know, a lot of times we cursed and swore at each other. You know, it wasn't buddy. It was friends and all. You know, friends of arguments, but you get back together, and that's what Majory teaches you. Forget about it. Tomorrow's another day, another step forward in the right direction. Away you go.
absolutely. That's a very good lesson in Masonry, right? And no Masons are going to see eye to eye all the time. Even when we talk about the future of Masonry and how to proceed, I've got into many a scrap with some brethren about, you know, where Masonry needs to go or the state of Masonry. But at the end of the day, like you said, we're all brothers. And
for this interview, I looked through some of the archives that I have, and I came across a book. It was given to me by very worshipful Mel McMullen, Masonry in Manitoba. It's a book, but he wrote something on the front of it, in it, about Masonry, this and that. But I've got it here. When you come home or when we come down to see you, I bring it with me, and then I'll pass it on to you. Then you can read what this Mel McMullen had to say about Masonry in general. But really interested.
yeah, I'd love to read it. I'll have to check it out for sure. Where do you see Masonry going in the future? Do you see it changing? What do you look forward to in Masonry? What do you think is changing about it?
I think Masonry is going to change now just because of this virus going on, because Masonry, the signs and symbols, the handshakes, well, how can you pass on from one degree to the next degree to the next degree without the handshakes whatever, and the steps are okay, but so whether there'll be a big change in Masonry, I don't know, because Grand Lodge of Manitoba is cancelled this year. There are going to be elections, but it's all through like Zoom like this and all that. And you told me that the Grand Lodge of Ontario is not changing this year, but
it's suspended.
Yeah, suspended. That's the same in Manitoba, suspended until. So when they get back together, we'll have to wait to see. But it's come through before. It was what, the 1918 when had the Spanish Actually, I was just reading in today's paper about the polio epidemic that they had in the 1950s in Manitoba, which to me was a very debilitating disease because it affected people's limbs. People ended up in wheelchairs and this. So I'm sure things will prevail. Brighter heads will come together and say, hey, we're going to have to do this like this. We're going to have to do this like that. But I don't think it'll change too much. It's changed quite a bit for me, coming out more out in the open than it used to be. I suppose with computers, previously it was all word to mouth, and that's because people couldn't read or write. Then when you learn to read or write, it was put on paper. Now people are learning computers, put on computer. What's the next step?
You know, one thing I wonder about, if it was a big change, is I remember growing up, you know, it seemed like there was a push to get families involved in Masonry. I remember going to a lot of Christmas parties, and I was certainly much more aware that you were Mason and aware of the other brothers, and, you know, hanging out with them at the Legion, and you had ladies' nights and wives were involved. Was that the case in your dad's time? Did you go to Masonic Christmas parties?
No, my Windsor Lodge, I cannot remember having Christmas parties or nothing like that. I knew there was the Eastern Star, but what is happening in Winnipeg, it seems to be the Demolay. The Demolay seems to be on the rise, which is, as you know, that's the youth 18 and the youth group of the, there's seems to be a few more Demolay coming on. And there was, when I grew up my dad's age, it was very, I'm not saying secretive. We knew where the Masonic Hall was. We knew they went to meetings, but apart from my dad and a couple of his friends, I wouldn't know in almost a population of 3,000 people how many were Masons or how many weren't. There must have been a few to keep the Masonic Hall going.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I know when I got to visit, there was one brother. He was, when I visited Windsor Lodge, I saw them put on a second degree, and there was a brother. He was acting as senior deacon. I'm not sure he was just sitting in the chair because they needed him, but yeah. He told me he was an older fellow, but he had met my grandfather, your dad. He had actually helped him through the chairs when he first went through, helped mentor him.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny you talk about, you know, your father having a heart attack while he was polishing his ambulance. It just goes to show how dedicated he was to the community and to his volunteer work, and what a caring guy he was. And he certainly passed that on to you, because I know how much you care about your brothers and your community and all the work that you do. So you certainly got that from him, your caring and your...
But have I passed it on to you? You're doing more than I ever did for Masonry. Well, it seems to be because you're secretary of one lodge. That's a hard bit. You seem more interested in it. As like yesterday, you did that interview with the nuclear scientist for the Euclid. the 47th proposition of Euclid. I've read it, but you seem interested in digging deeper. That's,
I am. It's definitely, basically, for whatever reason, it's something about it struck me, and I grew very fond of it. So I try to do as much stuff with it as I can. But in terms of just community support, I think, your dad being with St. John's Ambulance and volunteering to put the stairs on, and all the work that you and Mom do in the community, volunteering, whether it's with Variety Club or, I think you got a definite sense of community. I'm just wanting to help people from your dad.
We did, actually Mom still does, collects money from boxes for the Variety Club. Still a little bit involved in that. And years ago, Variety Club had a parking lot for the Bomber home games. So your mom and I, along with a couple of other people, would go and collect a $5 parking fee while people parked there for going to watch the Bomber game, and look after the cars for them while they were little things like that. And I don't help out as much as I used to. I do Poppy Day, with Poppy Day Fund. I'll stand and collect money for the veterans for the poppies. That's what we still do.
Speaking of Mom, I know she said only once, but since we are doing the Father's Day episode, does she want to come on and talk about Papa at all, and what type of guy he was?
She says no.
Oh, oh, it's fine. Tell her. She'll just be a minute.
Just be a minute.
Hi, love.
How's it going?
Good.
So we talked about Papa a little bit, but is there anything you want to add about the type of man he was and dad he was and all that type of stuff?
He was a wonderful dad and a wonderful father, and he did a lot for us. They didn't have that much money, but what they gave us was good. And he loved going on trips, but he always wanted to get home. If we were close to home, I don't think he wanted to spend money on a camping spot or whatever. So we would arrive back at something like 2 or 12 o'clock midnight. But no, they were both very good, and they did. We had good times, and as I said, they didn't have that much money, but what they gave us was love, and that's all that counts.
Isn't it true? I once heard a story that since I told about Dad getting in trouble, I should probably talk about you getting in trouble. Didn't you? I used to stay up late and sneak out and try to watch TV shows I wasn't supposed to late at night. Didn't you once get in trouble from Papa for you and Aunt Bev for watching Outer Limits or some scary show you weren't supposed to?
Yeah, we were watching this, was it Outer Limits? It was a scary show anyway. And I remember, was it that late at night though? It was maybe after supper or something like that. I can't really remember, but it wasn't late at night. And I remember Dad was there and we screamed, "Turn that bloody TV off," he say. He wasn't, you shouldn't watch shows like that. But no, he was, they were all very nice, and we had some wonderful times. And as I said, we didn't have that much money, but what they gave us was love, and that was the more important thing. And they had good times. I remember with Dad talking about the old times with his mom and dad and getting together at Christmas and whatever. And we always had Christmas parties, and everybody would take turns having Christmas dinner and whatever. And then Mom's mom and dad were wonderful people. I really miss Grandma. I loved her dearly, and she was a great grandmother. And Bev and I used to go over there and stay weekends with them, and we had a lovely time. Grandma was the type of person that she would give you anything, and they didn't have much money either, but she was a lovely person. So, and then Grandpa unfortunately died at quite a young age of pancreatic cancer, but they were all, it was good. It was good.
I should probably ask this because you deserve a medal. You got, me, who's not easy to deal with, who's a Mason, and then you're married to a Mason, and then your dad was a Mason, and your father-in-law was a Mason. You're a poor woman, your whole family are Masons. So what memories do you have of Masonic events, of ladies' nights, or going out with, the wives, or stuff like that? Do you have any fond memories of Masonry?
Yeah, it was very nice. Like Dad's ladies' night, going out to ladies' night was a wonderful event. And it's too bad in years to come that they didn't have I don't know whether people didn't have the numbers to have it, like we're buying tickets, but it was a lovely. And I remember my mom's mom and dad, my grandfather wanted to be a Mason, but my grandmother was very much against it because she thought it was too secretive. So he never became a Mason, but we did have like uncles and whatever that were in Masons. And then some aunts of mine from the country were an Eastern Star as well. They had a chapter, I think that's what you call it, chapter, right? In the country. So they were involved. And but no, it was good. And then, like you mentioned, Christmas parties they had, and whatever it was, and functions like after the lodge, maybe it was maybe the last season of their meetings, and last month of their meetings, and they would have where the wives could come and whatever, and meet each other, and so it was all very nice. And they did have other things that you volunteered with. I remember one of Dad's brothers he was Grand Master, was he? And they did a thing at Siloam Mission where you went and helped with the food and stuff like that, like serving it and things like that. So they had some good support for the community that they did. And like with Dad's lodge, and I'm sure other lodges, they would give money to the hospital here in Transcona, and donate money for certain things if they needed something, or needed a new machine or whatever, they would support that. So the work that Masons do is fantastic for the community and helping out the community.
Is it true, because I've heard a rumor that in your much younger days, at one of these ladies' nights, you found yourself dancing on a table? A rumor I might have heard.
It was a true rumor, but we had lots of fun. And as I said, that it was nice, and not only that, the camaraderie of the Masons, and I like Dad to have ladies' night with another lodge. So that was really nice, because the camaraderie among Masons and their wives is very, very special, and it's so nice to have that. And I do here phone up people that have lost their husbands and who were Masons, and I would phone them up and see how they're doing, and might take one lady out for lunch or whatever. So and they very much appreciate that, and I love doing it. So it's and as I said, it's a wonderful organization, and people are so good to one another, and they do a lot. So.
Well, thank you so much I know you said only one time, and I got you back a second time. Thank you so much. All right, love you.
Love you.
And he's back.
Yeah, no, that gave me time to get a drink of water to get this frog out of my throat.
Before we finish off,
yeah.
I was wondering, do you remember who sponsored you? Who your two sponsors for Masonry? And are they still floating around?
To be quite honest with you, Cameron, I've got it written down, but I kind of remember who. One of them might have been Most Worshipful Brother Kenny Bouchard, who appointed me as. But I kind of say I do know they both worked at CN Rail with me, so sorry, I can't remember that.
What do you like? What are some more either fond memories of events or just Masons that you remember that stick out in your mind? I know you talked about the driving home and having to scrape the inside of the car. But
There's over the years, there's lots of different things that things that stand out. One is when there was a candidate who was going around blindfolded, and for some reason he hadn't tied up his pants properly, and his pants fell down.
It's happened in my lodge too.
So there's things like that, But there's over the years, there's lots of different things that stick out in your mind. But at the end of it, is you have together to get to go say, his mom just mentioned about the volunteer work and the work that the Masons do. A lot of that is advanced by a lot of the Masons I know. They've gone on to the shrine and they do the charity work through the shrine and all that. But I haven't gone that far. But I cannot put a finger on anything and say that's the best thing I did. Well, I can. The best thing I did was to be raised to the sublime degree of a Master Mason. That's the best thing ever. And all the rest is gravy on the meat.
It is that the sublime degree is a special degree, and mine was particularly special because I got to have you in attendance to see it. So that was something that very fond memory I have. And then we got invited to the strip club afterwards, so that's even better. By some very nice and attractive young ladies.
Yeah. Okay, that's good. Anyways, that's all I can say.
Well, this is our Father's Day episode, so I'll say it now. Happy Father's Day. I love you, and I'm proud that you're my dad, and I'm proud that you're a Mason. You're my brother.
Okay, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to say what I wanted to say.
Well, I will
keep out of this.
I'll leave you for dinner. Do what Mom tells you. Don't get in trouble.
Okay, yeah, okay. Goodbye.
All right, love you.
I love you too. Bye.
Bye.